Okay, so now we're ready to sew with the machine. A couple of things I'm going to go through before we start. We've got the tension dial up here, which you can loosen and tighten. And what that does is, if you notice that the stitching is a little bit loose on the fabric, you can just tighten that up and it will make it a little bit neater. Then over here, we've got our less and more dial. And what that is for is it actually lowers and raises the bed as you're stitching, and that allows for the needle to catch the outside of the fabric just a little bit. So general rule of thumb is the thicker the fabric, the higher you want that raised, and the lesser the fabric, the less you want it raised. And you can, because it's just one tiny click at a time, you can be really accurate on there. And then also for finer fabric, you've got the skip stitch lever on the side here. So that will skip every other stitch, catching the underside of the fabric. So that's good for fine fabrics because it will just make it even more invisible. So I'm going to start off with a heavier weight fabric. So I've got some curtaining material here, and I'm just going to do it a single fold to begin with. Feed that underneath here. So I've got the guide on the front here, which I line up with the edge of the fabric. And then once that's lined up, I'm going to start sewing. So if this were a scrap piece of fabric, what I can do is sew it through, fold it over, check to make sure it's caught the fabric okay, and then check that it hasn't come through on the other side. So this is actually on less there. So I've just put it right up the top on the dial to more. That's really easy, just keeping that on the edge there. And because of the type of fabric it is, it's going to be quite forgivable on this stitch. So I can't really see that at all coming through. And that's right up at the top on more. So I'm just going to carry on like that. Now when I come to the end of the stitching, what I'm going to do, turn the hand wheel away from me, bring the needle to its highest position, and then just starting the downward slide, I want to call it the slide, but the downwards trajectory, and then use the knee lift to pull the bed right the way down and pull that out the back like that, and that'll break your fabrics, break your thread and lock it in as well. And it's just as easy if I've got a double fold to do the same thing. And that goes in there, right nicely on the edge like that. On there, bring the needle just on its downward stroke, pull the bed out, pull that to the back. That locks the threads there and gives you that blind hem on there. So now moving on to a sort of medium weight fabric here. Again, I'm going to start it off with the highest dial. If this were just a scrap piece, just to make sure it's all okay. And I'm getting the best stitch. So it's all about the balance between grabbing enough of the fabric and not too much so that it shows through on the underside. Like that. So there, it's pretty much invisible, but I can just about see the stitch on the underside. So I'm just going to put this to less. So down from 7 to maybe 6 on there. keeping that nice and tight on there, and then check the back, and now I can't see that stitch at all. So I'm happy with that now, so I can move on to the garment that I'm sewing, finish that off. When I come to the end of sewing, just bring that needle to the top of its downward stroke, lower the bed, and pull that out. Again, let's lock the fabric in, and I've got that blind hem on there. Now going over to a lightweight fabric, this is where I can be really accurate on that less or more dial. So again, dropping that bed down, placing the fabric in. On there, and then if I check the other side, you can see it coming up through. So I'm just going to make that again a little bit less. So I've dropped it down to 5. And then on the back there, it's becoming more and more invisible. So just drop that down a little bit more. So I'm between 4 and 5 now, just almost on 4. Calm down, and again it's getting there now. So now I can just dial it less, a couple of clicks. To make that practically invisible on there. Again, be really accurate with it. Come to the end, downward stroke, pull that out there, and there I've got practically invisible stitch, but still nicely caught on the underneath. So now if I start on the other side, put the fabric in. I'm going to go one more clip less. Sew that through, and there. I can't see it at all on the other side, but it's nicely caught there. And as I say, if I wanted to make that even more invisible, I can change this dial to skip a stitch. And now, so on the underneath, it will still make every stitch, but what that pin is doing, for every other stitch, it's staying down. So it's only every other stitch which is catching the fabric underneath. So when I come to the end there, needle on its downward trajectory, pull that out of the way, pull that out, and there I've caught it every other stitch, and I can't see it all through there.